I'm assuming she's become a lot more proficient with the the maintenance upkeep of the 1050s and
Oh
all that kind of
yeah,
stuff.
yeah, no, totally.
Because you like to sabotage the machines on her, right? Like when
Yeah,
you're
there
leaving for a
was.
match and you don't want her to reload any, then you totally sabotage the machine. And here we are with another episode of Open Action with John McClain, brought to you by Armscor Precision. This guest, I know very well, and you probably know fairly well if you're in the competition world. If you're in just the general firearms world, maybe his name may elude you a little bit. However, this is someone you should absolutely, positively follow, like, watch his videos, just because he's not just a good shooter. Okay, he's a great shooter, but he's also just a good person in general. Absolutely love this guy to death, and he has. Let's talk a little bit about who he is. As far as he's got 28 plus national or world titles and championships. That includes an IDPA, USPSA, IPSC, Steel Challenge, and recently his win at Three Gun Nationals. And he shoots for Canik and Century Arms. Today's guest is Nils Johansson Tinsenbergville. Nils Jonasson.
What's going on, John? Good to be here.
How was that for an intro, buddy?
I like it. I like it.
I know how much you hate being on camera and having to talk to people in general. So
I
just
know
kidding.
it's just the worst, right?
Oh, absolutely. So, all right. Well, Nils, obviously, I know you very well. So, you know, there's a lot of stuff we could talk about, but I don't want to necessarily have this become a competition podcast because I'm sure you've been on plenty of those and you always get asked the same questions. So for this episode, I just kind of wanted to chat a little bit about sharing you with the general population and the public out there. So as far as Nils Jonasson goes, let's just kind of start with a brief history of how you became involved in the firearms world. Like, obviously, we don't all start with guns in our hands. So at some point, someone had to introduce you to shooting, and then from there, we either decide to run with it or not. So tell everyone a little bit about where you come from and how your introduction to firearms began.
I mean, I may have been running around the house as a 2 and 3 year old with an L shaped like a gun and, shooting stuff for make believe when I was a little kid. But no, so my name is Nils Jonasson, and I started shooting fairly young. Like, my dad brought me out to the range, and I shot a bolt action 22 long rifle when I was like 6 or 7 years old. But it wasn't until I was 12 when I started kind of watching him shoot local matches and coming out and thinking, you know what, I could do this too. And it was when I was 12 years old that I shot my first actual competition. So I've been doing it for a long, long time. That was back in 2001. Fast forward 23 years. And yeah, I work full time for Canik. I travel around the country and the world. I shoot guns and I talk about guns and I design guns. So I kind of live in the dream.
How old did that make you feel having to say that 23 years ago is when you started shooting?
It's okay. I've gone through a bunch of phases in my shooting career and just kind of my life in general, and I've got a lot of responsibilities I didn't have way back then, and I'm grateful for some of them, and some others are a pain in the butt. So it's just another part of life.
Man, ain't that the truth? So, all right. Now you said you started when you were 12. What is the first gun that you strapped on and shot a competition with?
So the first pistol I ever shot in competition was a Series 70 Colt Gold Cup 45 with 7-round magazines.
Oof. And so were you guys load? I mean, because let's be honest, I'm spoiled. I don't know the history of reloading and stuff. Were you guys reloading your own ammunition at that point, or were you
At
just kind
that
of
point,
shooting
we
whatever was
were.
available?
Yeah,
Okay.
no, my dad and I loaded on a single stage rock chucker, which is just a single stage press that basically involves you pulling a handle and then pulling the handle again and then pulling handle again and then pulling handle again and then pulling handle again, and that gives you one cartridge. And you do that all over again. So
Well, I mean, but that's
we upgraded to a Dillon 550 within the first year and a half, and that was the best thing we ever did.
yeah, because I mean, in reality, when you're talking about reloading machines, like when you're talking about the new 550s, 650s, 1050s, and all that kind of stuff, in reality, it's the same idea of having to pull the handle 6 or 7 times to get one round. The difference is you're able to get 7 or 8 bullets working simultaneously to up the production versus 7 times for one and then
Right.
and go on. So
Yeah. No, that was a huge improvement for us, and what really sparked that change was there was a kind of a regional match that's close to us called the Western States Single Stack Championship. And I know you shot this match, but way back then, my dad and I both shot this with 45s. And we loaded over the course of, I think, 2 weeks, 1,000 rounds to prepare for this match. So we had enough for the competition itself and extras for reshoots, or, at the time I wasn't very good, so my misses. So long story short, we loaded 1,000 rounds in about 2 weeks. And
oof.
yeah, we actually worked our butts off to get everything resized, deprimed, processed. We didn't even have like a powder funnel thing. Like we'd scoop it out and then, like, it was a horrible experience. And we loaded 1,000 rounds in a couple weeks. And I think that next month we bought the Dillon.
Well, a horrible experience, but it also, I think, it's important to note when you have crap experiences like that in life, a lot of times that's what creates a new appreciation for when you do and are able to make that next upgrade. Imagine having to ride horseback everywhere you went, and then all of a sudden one day you got a car. You're like, oh my gosh, so much better. You know what I mean? Like,
no, you're totally right. And I mean, it's definitely some bonding time with my dad, I guess. So you could look at it from that perspective. But yeah, it definitely makes me appreciate what I've got now. I load on 1050s, which is like a 7-stage progressive automatic reloader, essentially. And I remember the days when I loaded one at a time. So I can appreciate that a lot more now, having done it, than maybe some other people.
and now you talked about at the beginning how you've got some more responsibilities and stuff. It's not just you that's burning through powder and primers anymore in your household. You've been pairing that partnership up with the Mrs. now, Jessica Jonasson, for quite a few years now. Yeah.
Yeah. So she shoots mostly open division with a 38 Super Comp pistol. And she chews through primers and powder, and I have to buy Starline 38 Super Comp cases, and yeah, it's not cheap.
Now, how is she as far as the reloading world goes? Like, does she? I'm going to assume that she's as involved with the process as you, such as knowing what powders she prefers and what kind of bullet weights and how she wants her bullets to be set up. But I could also be wrong in that maybe you just kind of told her, here's what we're going to do, and here's why we're going to do it. So how does that kind of go? Does Jessica get like as in-depth about reloading as most people that I know do, where they say, oh, I'm going to use this powder or use this powder or use this powder and stay away from these and da-da-da-da, or how's that go?
She is like that in a way, but I've spent a lot of time doing some R&D in that world, so she takes a lot of my advice as gospel. But there will be the occasion where she'll question the why to it, and I need to explain. And if I don't do a good enough job, we might change powders or primers or, overall length, depending on what she thinks is right. But no, for the most part, she knows what's going on. She has her preferences, but she also understands that, maybe a Vitavori N3 and 3/8 powder, while it might technically be cleaner and give a little bit more gas and less felt recoil, it's also twice the price of CFE pistol, which is what she currently loads. So little things like that maybe it's an advantage, but in the grand scheme of things, the cost difference just isn't worth it.
Mm-hmm. And I'm assuming she's become a lot more proficient with the the maintenance upkeep of the 1050s and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, totally.
Because you like to sabotage the machines on her. Right? Like
yeah,
when you're leaving for a match and you don't want her to reload any, then you totally sabotage the machine.
Yeah, we had I don't want to say an altercation, but a discussion, because she was planning on loading some ammunition while I was out of town for a match. years ago. Can't even remember what year it was. You might, better than me.
It was a while ago, for sure.
So I go off to this match. I think it was in Texas, and she goes to reload her ammo, and something's miscalibrated with the 1050. Like, I think the arm on the slide mechanism slid up the shaft a little bit, so it wasn't actuating the primer slide correctly on the 1050. If you know the machine I'm talking about, you have an idea of what's going on. She immediately came to the conclusion that I didn't trust her with the reloader, so I intentionally sabotaged the machine so she couldn't reload her ammo while I was out of town. And her solution to that was to go to Dillon, which is a at the time it was like a 15-20 minute drive from our house. And she had our friend Brian Muggy give her a handful of broken 1050 parts. That's all she wanted. And she took a picture of like this pile of parts on my reloading room bench. And she's like, babe, something was wrong with the 1050 and I tried to take it apart and all this happened. Like, what do I do? Trying to make me freak out. Which I did for like 5 seconds, and then I realized what she was doing. But yeah, to this day, she's still convinced that I sabotaged my 1050, because we weren't married at the time, sabotaged my 1050 so she couldn't reload ammo because I didn't trust her. Which, for the record, is 100% not true.
Yeah. Well, so there is another side quest to this story, and that's the fact that
We're not going to go into the side. We're not going to go into the side quest. That's too deep.
So she called me and asked me what I thought, and I said, well, I mean, maybe, possibly, I don't know, I can't give. But yes, it was totally a scheme to say, you know what you should do is go find a bunch of broken parts and send him a picture of it, and suggest that maybe you tried to fix something, and it all, have like a Leslie Knope or a Parks and Rec moment of like, Nils, I tried to make ramen in the coffee pot and I broke everything.
Right.
So yeah, now
I'm trying to think. I think that was the year I shot the Infinity Open back-to-back in limited and open divisions and got disqualified.
That might have been.
I'm pretty sure that was the year.
Might have been the year, but it wasn't the match you were at, for sure. I can't remember what match you were at, but yeah, it was quite an interesting weekend. Yes, there is more to that story, but we'll just save that for our own personal enjoyment because of what happened. But okay, so at this point now, you and Jessica wasn't always a shooter. You kind of turned her into one with your celebrity status.
When we met, I was actually working at an indoor shooting range, and she came in. She needed to get some equipment for some Canadian friends of hers from out of town that were competitive shooters. But she was currently and had been a member of our shooting range, and she had shot, well before I met her. So I didn't introduce her to firearms. I didn't introduce her to shooting, but I'm definitely the one that brought her into kind of the competition world and got her started with that.
And ever since then, it's just been like a whirlwind of information and training and practice. Because I had the pleasure of meeting Jessica fairly early on in your guys' relationship, and then I've been able to watch her kind of progress as we go. Now, tell me, what is it like trying to teach someone that you have such a close relationship with?
It's tough. As I'm sure you know, it's really difficult to sometimes convey information to someone you love. Especially when, it's very difficult. It is.
No,
I don't recommend it, and if anyone knows how to properly do that with their significant other, I'd really like that information and suggestions from that person, because I haven't found a way, short of just accepting that we're not going to necessarily agree with everything, and she's not going to blindly do what I tell her to do, and she's going to want reasons why, which is great, but sometimes I feel like I don't need to explain myself on every little detail, and that's just not her personality. And I think that's kind of where I fall off, or we fall off the rails, is she wants clarification, and my clarification is because that's the best way. Which isn't, I understand.
That's almost as bad as because I said so.
Right. In my case, to be fair, because it's the best way or because I said so, 99% of the time is correct. But when you're talking to your wife, that's not always the right answer.
See, and so in my history of training people that are close to me, it's the disconnect. Typically, what I found is that it's you can tell them something and it becomes a criticism instead of like a suggestion or a tech or tip or whatever. So yeah, I've tried to teach like my mom shooting and stuff, and it's like I could say something 6 or 7 times, and it becomes like, well, why are you chewing me out about that? And then a complete stranger, I could go walk over and say, hey, can you go over her and tell her that she needs to do this? They'll walk over and tell her, and she'll be like, oh, okay, yeah, that makes sense. I'm like, I literally said that 6 times in a row, but right. So and it's just because that relationship dynamic is there. But
I think that's part of it. Another facet of this scenario is, when it's someone we really, really care about, we almost try extra hard to, make sure they get it. And I don't think that's the best way for a lot of people to learn stuff. I think the most valuable information you learn is when you're put in a position to learn something on your own, rather than being spoon-fed information and like an ABC, XYZ way to do something exactly. You're better to put someone in a position where they can learn the information on their own, not by themselves, but kind of like as a guided training where they come out learning something based off of the information you told them, not just doing what you told them to do. And I think that's kind of where we fall off the rails, is we just tell them what to do, and we forget that part of, kind of self-exploration or self-learning.
Yeah, you know what? Actually, yes. So you're absolutely right. Absolutely. The idea of reading something in a book might give you the knowledge, but it doesn't give you the experience, such as going out in the field and actually trying it. And that was something like, as an EMT, was you could read how to treat a diabetic patient all day long, but until you actually got into the field and experienced a diabetic patient and had to learn how to assess and problem solve what the issue was and then how to correct it and stuff, it was really the only way you could feel comfortable with that. So that you're absolutely right. I think that does make sense, and that's just good life advice. See, we've turned in from a firearms podcast to a life advancing podcast here with Nils Jonasson. Who'da thunk, right? So all right, now obviously you shoot a lot, and a lot of people through my experience, it's funny because it's when you learn, when you have a passion for something and you really enjoy doing it, and you make it a goal to kind of make it your career, eventually it becomes a career. And sometimes that career then all of a sudden becomes not as, it's harder to stay as motivated as you were when you were just kind of starting out, right? So for me, I always try and find that there's a good way to renew that flame and that desire to work and improve and all that kind of stuff, is to find something else to just give you time off for a bit. Now the problem is, with you being in Phoenix, like, you can shoot year around. You've got the weather ability. Here now that I'm in Missouri, like, sometimes when there's 7 inches of snow on the ground, I could go out and shoot, but I'd be miserable doing it. Is there anything...
I'll tell you what, that's the one thing I hate more than anything, is shooting in the cold. It's just awful.
It is. And like being hot and shooting it's miserable too, but you can at least feel the gun, you can feel your magazines, you can grip things and all that. It's just sweatier.
Right.
But yeah, in the cold, you're like, fingers are numb and oh yeah, it can be absolutely miserable for sure. So my question to you, and this is something actually I really don't know a good answer to myself, would be, what the hell do you do for fun that doesn't involve shooting?
Well, you probably already know what I'm going to say to this, and the honest answer is I shoot different stuff. So my job revolves around Canik firearms, and I travel a lot, and I shoot a lot of major matches. And every once in a while, there will be a lull where either there are no major matches for a couple of week period or maybe a month and a half period, or there's a major match outside of the pistol world that I can gear up for. And doing stuff like that, 3-gun is actually a perfect example. Doing stuff like 3-gun or 2-gun or now PCC, getting ready for PCC nationals, is so much different than what I do for quote unquote work with Canik that it's a little bit of a reset in that way for me also. So that's what I've started doing, and I have done kind of subconsciously over the years. But you're absolutely right. When you shoot a lot, it can get tedious sometimes. That's true.
Mm-hmm. But now, not to say though, like, just to understand, Nils is not just entirely a machine that only shoots guns, because I know for a fact that you and I both upset a very good friend of ours. I don't know, upset is being loosely worded here, but we did upset a friend of ours, Jared Clark, who is a good friend of ours with Voodoo Tactical, who's our bag and shooting mat sponsor and all kind of stuff, because we were all in Phoenix shooting maybe Area 2 or something like that, and we wanted to do something that night, and so he was like, oh, let's go to Top Golf. And he's a golfer. He's an avid golfer. Right. And he thought for a moment maybe he had something that he could do better than us, but he didn't realize that I had been a youth competitive golfer for a brief stint in my life, and you just know how to whack a ball. So I remember we went up and started whacking balls.
I hit some golf balls back when I was, 13 and 14. Yeah.
Yeah, and you still hit some dingers. So I remember when he watched you go up and you smacked the crap out of a ball straight as an arrow right down the middle of the Top Golf drive, he was like, what the hell can you guys not do? Like, seriously? I thought this was supposed to be my game, and you guys just show up and take it away from me. So now, recently, and I don't know, like, I know Top Golf was an experience for you, but was the last time that you went out golfing, I know you went out and played 18 holes. Was that like the first time you actually properly played a round of golf? Or
that was my first full round of golf, yes. Up to that point, my only experience had been going to a driving range, going to Top Golf, or sneaking onto a fairway and shooting balls really quick in between sets, or whatever they call the groups of people.
Okay, so tell everybody what your experience was that, because like I find a lot of people say they don't want to try golf because they think they could get addicted to it, and I can see it because I do play golf here and now, and I can see where the fun of it is. But how was your experience with golf?
My experience was very frustrating, John. I did make a point to finish all 18 holes. I did not play the worst of our group. And I shot a couple of amazing shots that after I hit them, I think to myself, what the hell was different about that shot than all of my other ones, right? So it's one of those things that I can go do. And again, I haven't played a round of golf since, and that was a couple of years ago. It was something I was able to do where I could, in my mind, do everything that my brain thinks I'm supposed to do, and nothing works correctly. And then out of the blue, seemingly doing the same thing up here, it works perfect. The ball goes straight, or it curves the way I want it to, and it's perfect. And in those moments, you're like, man, golf is amazing. Every other time in golf, you're like, F this shit. So no, I don't recommend people play golf because one, it's a perfectly horrible use of a rifle range. Like, how many yards is a decent 18-hole course? It's a big old rifle range. Two, it's one of the most frustrating things that I've done is play an entire round of golf. So yeah, I don't know if I would recommend anyone pick that up.
Now, see, I feel like your experience with golf is...
And I paid $125 for a round, an 18-hole round, in the middle of summer. So not only was the weather terrible, it was expensive, and we were out there for hours.
How much drinking did you do while you're on the range, or on,
Not
on the
enough.
golf
Not
course?
enough.
Maybe that was why the experience. If you can remember your first experience, it means you didn't drink enough.
Possibly. Yeah, it was frustrating. We went out with Jessica's family, so they came in from out of town. So her dad and her stepmom and her aunt, and we all played a round of golf with some other friends, and we had a really good time. But I don't know that, especially with my other time commitments with, all my shooting, I don't think I could get good enough to the point where I would enjoy shooting or where I would golfing. Enjoy golfing. Man, I can't even talk. I'm so mad about golf.
Well, I think the the fun side to that story is hearing you explain your experience with golf means that the majority of our experiences as it goes to shooting, because I feel like I do the same thing over and over, and sometimes I hit the steel and other times I do a standing reload after 4 makeup shots like I did at Area 3 recently. So it's good to know that you're human in some aspects. It's just shooting's not one of them. You're a goddamn machine.
No, I mean, I mess up in shooting all the time. It's just generally I'm able to conceal those mistakes with, some positive attributes as well. If things really fall off the rails for me, people will know. But I've something I've kind of kept under control and have learned to mitigate over the years. But you're right. My golf is a lot of other people's shooting. I understand that.
Now, let's talk about multi-gun nationals for a moment, because, like you said, it's kind of a branch off of what is typical for you. Like, your specialty is definitely the handgun for sure.
Right.
How much training or practice did you did before you shot multi-gun nationals, just to make everyone else feel really bad?
So I'm not gonna lie. I'm gonna be honest here. I went out to the range twice with the rifle because I had to confirm my zero because I had to change ammunition because the 55 grain Wolf Gold that I had used for years past in multi-gun got discontinued by the company, so I couldn't find any more ammunition. So I switched over to PMC Bronze 55 grain round nose booktail, whatever it is, the PMC Bronze 55 grain 223 ammo. So I had to confirm my zero for that. So I went out to the range twice to confirm zero and chronograph my rifle. And then I went out twice with the shotgun and practiced 6 quad loads. And all I was doing with the shotgun was function firing it, making sure everything was good from 8 months ago, which was the last multi-gun match that I had shot.
And that is amazing and frustrating, because I went out and trained quite a bit. And I'll say this, my gear just ended up giving me a headache. Granted, it was also self-induced because, apparently I didn't think about the fact that my shotgun magazines could rust on the inside.
I don't think anyone thinks about that. It's a super strange thing, John.
Yeah, apparently. Except that every other person that I talked to and showed them, they go, "Oh yeah, you should definitely oil the inside of those."
So I was watching some of the open shotgunners shoot, and they mostly use box-fed magazines, whether it's the Rock Island VR80 or some kind of AK, abomination that takes big old 15, 20, 25 round stick magazines, or a drum or whatever. And those people, no joke, are putting their ammunition, their shells, in ice chests to keep them cool, so the plastic doesn't deform. So when it actually goes in the magazine, it feeds out of the magazine, and everything hopefully works perfectly. Open shotguns, I just don't understand. I really don't.
Yeah, it was an interesting experience because that was my first time ever shooting open multi-gun, and there was just already right off the bat, you're using a lot of gear in multi-gun, and then you throw open in it, and all of a sudden now you've got bipods, you've got magazines, you've got pouches for those magazines, or some way you have to put them and mount them on your body and stuff like that. And I was just like, dude, multigun is already a lot, and shooting open is even more a lot. So I really don't know, like, now granted, maybe I also am a little jaded from the experience, because having the equipment malfunctions on the day that I did kind of ruined the match for me. But I can't decide whether or not I would rather shoot tack or open in multigun if it came down to it again. Like, I feel like I would give open another try just to make sure that with my gear all running how it ran. But
I think I would definitely shoot a rifle, pistol, 2-gun division at multi-gun nationals if they had it.
Now, what about modified? How does that division look to you as far as the idea of being able to put a red dot on your shotgun?
As far as I understand, the only difference between tactical division and modified division is it gave you the ability to put a red dot on your pistol mounted on the slide. It gave you the ability to start with 12 rounds in your gun, I believe. So you started with higher round capacity for your shotgun. And you could put a red dot on your shotgun. And you could run bipods on your rifle, I believe.
Yeah,
I'm pretty sure those are the main differences between TAC and modified. So there is a difference, right? So I would say modified has an advantage technically over tactical division from an equipment standpoint. It had really good attendance at USPSA multi-gun nationals. So from that perspective, I think it's great. I am more of an iron sight pistol shooter. Like, that's my preference. That's what I've done for years and years. And like, that's more than likely what I'll continue to shoot for multi-gun. So between the two,
even after all this time that you've spent behind a carry optics pistol with a red dot, you still prefer going iron sights than with a red dot?
I've done it for over 20 years. Like, that's, iron sight shooting is my comfort zone. Now, that said, over the last year and a half, 2 years, I've gotten to the point with the carry optics gun and the red dot where I understand how to use it better. But that in turn has made the transition back to irons more difficult for me as time goes on. So it's kind of a trade-off that I've had to undergo. But yes, I still prefer iron sights. If I had to choose one, that's what I would choose.
See, and I'm with you. Like, when I shoot a red dot, yes, it's kind of nice having a little bit more precision of knowing where your shot's going to go. But I'm so much slower, and I'm, like you said, like, I'm not comfortable with it. So I kind of like confirm, over confirm, then send it, as opposed to my iron sights being like, yep, good enough, pull the trigger and just go for it. But it's just interesting that it seems like the firearms industry as a whole, everyone seems to be putting red dots on their carry guns and competition guns and all that kind of stuff, thinking that's better. And I'm curious as to, like, I don't know. I guess I'd be interested to know if the reason behind the big shift is because, we all think initially that gear will make you better, right? Like, it's always got to be something. Like, when I was starting competition, I had to get a better holster. I had to get a speed holster. I couldn't be using a regular outside the waistband holster. It slows down my draw, right? Or I have to have better mag pouches because, I have to put one in the front and angle it with my arm so I can get reloads faster and all that kind of stuff. And I wonder if that's what the big shift is behind the red dot optic craze. Not to say red dots are not good, and, like, obviously they've gained popularity, and I don't think they necessarily gain popularity just because of the cool factor. I do think there's a lot of positives that come with putting a red dot on whatever firearm platform you're putting it on. But yeah, like, I still float back towards the idea of I'd prefer to just have iron sights and go with it. I feel like I'm more comfortable and faster at doing it because, yeah, I don't know. What do you think? Do you think a lot of people are just putting the red dots on the guns just to try and make themselves feel better or be better shooters, or do you think, like, that's legitimately? What are your thoughts on that?
So I think the reason you feel you shoot the red dot slower and that you're double confirming your sight picture and, like, aiming multiple times for every individual shot, you're doing the same thing I used to do, which is you're bringing your focus back to your sights as if you were shooting iron sights. in hopes that that's going to make your shot more accurate with the red dot. And you just have to realize that it's a complete waste of time, and you can let yourself focus on the target 100% of the time. And if you do that, then red dot is faster, and you can be more precise as a result of it. I mean, I do think the red dot is a faster sighting system, and it's definitely easier to learn how to shoot it accurately compared to iron sights. So from that perspective, for sure, red dots are a great way to go. But, iron sights don't break, generally. Red dots run out of batteries. Red dots, the glass can break. Red dots, can be submerged in water and can get fogged up. I don't care what kind of coating you have on it. Like, that kind of thing can still happen. There are drawbacks to red dots, obviously, but I think the biggest difference is just the way you have to utilize it. Like, with a red dot, target focus, 100% all day long, every day. Iron sights, the way I shoot them, I have to transition my focus back and forth from the target more towards the sights depending on the difficulty of the shot. Where red dot, you just don't have to do that. And in fact, when you do it, it makes you feel like it's slower, but it's not because it's slower, it's because you're doing more things subconsciously that are a waste of time.
Yeah. We've discussed that before, so that's a good shooter tip there for anyone out there that is shooting a red dot, to make sure you make it a point to stay target focused, because you're absolutely right. I did find that times when I'm shooting my dot, I have to consciously make a effort to focus on the target, and even to the point that, like, for open or for multi-gun nationals, like, before a stage would start and I was starting with my handgun, I had to, like, I wouldn't say it audibly, but the last thought in my head before the timer would go off would be, look at the target, like, focus on the target, bring the dot to the target, kind of thing. So for those of you that are shooting and learning how to shoot red dot optics on your pistols, absolutely, Nils makes a good point. Stay focused on the target, bring the dot to the target. Don't bring your focus back to the dot like we've been taught and trained over years. Now, if you're going to teach someone brand new how to shoot, would you start them off with iron sights, or would you start them off with the red dot? Because the argument that I've always heard was that when you have a brand new shooter and you teach them how to shoot with a red dot starting off, right off the bat, what you're doing is you're lightening the load of what they need to think about when they're actively pulling the trigger. Because instead of, okay, first I got to bring the gun up, make sure I got a good stance, good grip. Then, okay, let's take the front sight, let's drop it into the notch of the rear sight, let's make sure the top's lined up, let's make sure there's light on both sides of the front sight. Okay, that looks good. Now let's go ahead and start focusing on the trigger. The process, or the thought is that, well, you put a red dot on there, which means that you completely eliminate the stress of having to make sure the sights are aligned. Instead, is the dot on the target? Yes. Okay, and then the only thing that person has to focus on is the trigger pull. So if you're teaching a brand new shooter, let's say you were going to go out to the range and meet up with someone that had never shot a gun before and they wanted to start, would you start them off with an iron sight gun, or would you start them off with a red dot?
You can approach this from a couple different angles. My wife would tell you the only way to start a new shooter is with an open gun. And that's because it doesn't have any recoil, the trigger is easy to manipulate, and the sighting system is easy to utilize. So it's got a red dot, you've got a compensator, it doesn't have much recoil. So it takes all those extra things that you need to worry about and it lets you focus more on the active shooting. I kind of think that if you started somebody like that, and I don't think there's a right or a wrong way, right? Like, let me make that very clear. But the same way that you and I have an issue going to red dots, I think if people started and only shot red dots, if and when they had to transition back to iron sights, they would have that same issue that we have, just in the reverse direction, right? So I know some really, really good open shooters or red dot shooters that don't shoot iron sights very well. And I'm talking about national champion optic shooters that, for the most part, you put iron sights in their hands and they'll still shoot okay, but they're not going to win. So I think it would just change where you're handicapped. But I don't think there's a right or a wrong way necessarily.
Okay. So if you were going to go out and teach a new shooter, then you would probably more than likely start them off with iron sights.
I would. but I think I'm also biased because that's how I started, and I feel like that's, the traditionally proper way to do it. But
Hmm.
if somebody wanted to start with optics, I would never say that that's wrong.
Okay. Well, so yeah, and there's you and I both in the same boat. We started with irons, and so that's kind of where we're comfortable with, and that's our comfort zone. But at the same time, I almost look at it like, yeah, there's automatic cars out there, and there's paddle shifter cars, but like it's not a true car unless you know how to drive a stick shift.
Right.
Like there's almost a little bit of nostalgia that goes to the idea of knowing how to properly shoot iron sights as well. Not to mention, as you said, if it can go wrong, it will.
Hmm.
Every part on a gun will eventually fail. They're machines. They are getting beat up every time you pull the trigger. Every single part of that firearm is going to get some sort of a beating. So everything's going to break eventually, kind of thing, and that includes a red dot. And so it's kind of like if you completely eliminate the training aspect to only being an optic shooter, what happens when that optic does fail you? You can't pick and choose when it's going to fail, and it's never going to fail in a good time. But I think, like you said, it's almost important to be able to do both. I think if you're gonna shoot a red dot, you have to know how to shoot both. If you're just gonna shoot iron sights, then who gives a damn about a red dot?
Well, it's really
don't
it's
worry
really
about
important to understand the concept behind each, right? Whether you shoot irons predominantly or you shoot optics, like if you don't understand, the other system, like you're doing yourself a disservice. So yeah, definitely you want to use both, but we're talking about starting a new shooter, and I mean, I would go either way. I don't think there's a wrong way to do it. You want to take one thing that new shooters don't like is noise. So maybe an open gun isn't necessarily the best route. Um, Maybe a 9mm on the top end, maybe even a 22 would be preferable because you take the recoil out, you can put a red dot on it, and the noise is very, very low. And I think even for me now, like I react more to the audible from a round going off than the actual recoil itself.
it. Yeah, that's true. Hey, with that being said, do you own any suppressors?
No,
Why not?
I don't know, man. There's only so much time in the day.
Do you think you'll ever want to go down that path?
Maybe from like a hunting application standpoint, yeah. But I mean, my schedule is pretty packed with matches and competitions, and like the amount of time that I have to start hunting is pretty darn small. And then add a new set of gear and suppressors, and now I'm doing tax stamps, and yeah, I don't have any SBRs. I don't have any NFA items.
Dude, you gotta get yourself a suppressor, man. You gotta. I'll tell you what. It's I've made the mistake of shooting many matches with a little bit of an ego of thinking like not. Now, granted, I know for a fact you double plug when you're shooting like your AR and stuff like that, which is good. I didn't when I was early on, and I can totally feel effects of that happening. But man, having a suppressor, even just in the training aspect, with as many rounds as we used to shoot anyway when we would train and practice rifle, so much better. Oh, they're so amazing. I'm
They
a
are
big fan
fun.
of
I
suppressors
I
now.
think the most fun I've had shooting a suppressor is actually like more of a high powered rifle, like a 338 Norma type thing, reaching out a couple of thousand yards. Suppressors are super cool and stuff like that.
Mm. Yeah, no, I've broken into the suppressor world, and I'm just like, oh, I get it. I get it. I get why they're so beneficial, and now I just. It's funny because before I ever got my first suppressor, I didn't really have a dog in the fight of the idea of like the ATF is dumb and why it's taking at the time like 12 to 14 months to get the paperwork approved for a suppressor. Now that I have one, I'm just like it's literally just a metal tube with some chambers in it. Like, oh my gosh, I have to wait now 7 to 8 months to get it approved is kind of silly. So I have a little bit more of a dog in the fight now that I own one.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I own two and I have two more on the way. But
Nice. Well, and
so
there are a lot of European countries that I don't know if they require, but it's almost, it's heavily recommended, highly recommended to use a suppressor when hunting in European countries, and they're not regulated like they are in the United States. So it's very interesting.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And now, one of the things that I've learned is that the difference between like the U.S. suppressor manufacturers versus the European ones is that the U.S. manufacturers build their suppressors to a different level as far as quality goes, where that suppressor can pretty much last you your entire life, which is why you get some of the price tags of 8, 9, $1,200 or whatever for some of these suppressors, is because it's going to last you the entire, like the rest of your life. You can shoot that suppressor, and it will be good. Versus in Europe, like a lot of their suppressors you can buy for $150, $200, $300, but like the quality, they deteriorate much faster. So they may only last you for like 3,000-4,000 rounds before you start to see a very very big send off, as far as the quality and the performance of that suppressor goes. So you kind of like buy a suppressor almost every 4 or 5, depending on how much you shoot. Obviously, I think we're, as Americans, we also look at it as like, well, shit, 2,000 rounds, that's nothing. I can shoot that in a month. It's like, well, in Europe, 2,000 rounds is probably a lot to be shooting through your hunting rifle. Like, not many people are shooting.
Well, and that's a lot of rounds
to
shoot through a hunting rifle in the United States too. I mean, I don't know anyone, or I don't know many people that have 2,000 rounds through a hunting gun,
unless they use it for like some sort of like, maybe they go to a weekend long range match or something like that just for shits and giggles and use it. Because like if I don't own a bolt action hunting gun yet, but if I did and like someone was like, hey, you want to come shoot a long range match, I'd be like, yeah, sure, I'll suck, but what the hell, why not? Like I got the toy, I can go play the game. But
speaking of hunting, are you familiar with a YouTuber named Hootie Hoo?
I'm not.
So he's kind of like an everyman's hunter guy. He's decked out in camo. He's super cool personality on YouTube. He does a lot of hunting stuff. And he and I shot something several months ago called the Rock Chuck Olympics together. And I shared a rental car with him. And super cool guy. Anyway, he was talking about some comments that he got on some gear review video or hunting video that he had. And it was like one of the most hilarious question comments that he's gotten. And it was somebody asking about velocity on one of his rifles. And they were of the opinion, or they had the impression, that the farther downrange the bullet went, the faster the bullet got. So I swear to God. So he said this guy was like, yeah, so it exits the barrel at X feet per second. And then how fast is it going at 300 yards? And Hootie's like, well, it's, less. He's like, well, how's that possible? It's increasing velocity. Like, was convinced of that fact. I thought that was funny.
Well, the world is flat, too.
And the Coriolis effect is not real.
Well,
fake news.
It can't be. Because, again, the world is flat. There is no round. Like, what do you mean, the rotation of the Earth? No. All right, so let's talk about that. Because I've seen your posts about that, but I never actually, every time I've thought about it, we've always been at a match and we end up going, what the hell was that event? Can you explain what that was exactly?
Yeah, so Gavin at the Ultimate Reloader on YouTube did a collaboration series with several sponsors and manufacturers and put on what he ended up calling the Rock Chuck Olympics. And it's on YouTube, so Google it, check it out. All the episodes are posted. But it was, I think, like an 8 or a 10 episode mini series that they did on the Ultimate Reloader YouTube channel. And they brought 5 or 6 popular shooter personalities on YouTube. They brought me as a competition shooter representing Canik, and a PRS shooter, F-class precision rifle shooter, and a couple of hunters. And we shot head-to-head and murdered a bunch of steel rock chucks with Stag Arms AR-15s and Canik 9mm pistols.
Okay, so it was a competition then, but it wasn't a competition in the fact that like all nothing but top level shooters were going there. It sounds like it was kind of like a cross marketing idea of bringing people from all firearm disciplines together to try and compete. Is that
Yeah,
a good
exactly.
explanation of it?
And it turned
Now, were you
it,
guys
it
split up
turned
in
in,
teams?
it was an individual sport, so we were all
Okay.
competing, head to head against each other. And they had a bunch of different shooting challenges. They had, like they called it a hidden rock chuck stage. They had a speed pistol stage. They had an extreme long range pistol stage. They had an extreme long range rifle stage. They had a two gun stage. They had a PRS stage. So they had a whole bunch of different types of shooting that you would see. And then they had a hunter style stage, which was that sort of the hidden rock chuck stage. And everyone had really good stages. Everyone had really terrible stages. But it was a great time. I got to learn a lot from Eric Cortina, who's a F-class world champion rifle shooter, as well as Peter Milan, who came in from South Africa, and he specializes in PRS style shooting. So I learned a lot of really valuable information from really high level rifle shooters. So it was a really fun experience for me.
So is that an event then that like what do you know what their plans are as far as like do they want to expand to becoming like their own shooting organization, or is that just kind of like something they just wanted to do for marketing and they'll probably just try and keep it within that staying within their lane?
That would be a question for Gavin at the Ultimate Reloader.
Well, I might have to reach out to him because that sounds fun, especially for the people that jump around in the firearms or like I said, like being that I'm now into hunting, that sounds like a fun challenge for me, even though I'd probably get my ass whooped on the PRS long range side stuff. But
I'll tell you what, when Eric started talking about what was it, altitude density and the barometric pressure and the wind values and stuff like that, I understood what he's saying, but I have no idea what he meant.
Yeah. So he was speaking English, but you just couldn't.
Right, exactly.
Yeah. No, I think we've all been in that situation. That was like when first time you get into the medical field and people start throwing out like terms and stuff like that, like patients laying supine and having distal pain from the elbow. You're like, what? Why can't you just say patient was laying on his back and his arm hurt? That sounds like an easier way to say it than the supine patient had distal pain from the shoulder.
Well, Eric was one of those cool guys. So he has all this neat technology. So he has a Kestrel that's tied to an app on his phone that has GPS coordinates and that pulls barometric data like from your location, and you can measure distances. So you don't even have to range things necessarily. You can, from a Google map, you can pull a point to a point and get an exact distance from those two locations. And off of that, he has technology that will give him holds in mils or MOAs or whatever. So there's all that stuff I need to buy. And it'll also tell you wind drift and things like that. And somebody asked him, if you don't have all this, like, what do you do in XYZ situation? And he's like, well, you guess. Except he's done it for so long and he's seen so many different winds and different velocities of wind, and like a piece of grass moves this much, his guess is pretty darn accurate. So it was cool to shoot with those guys.
That does sound like a fun. So you were there as a competitor, not just as like a stagehand RO or anything like that.
I was there as the Canik pistol expert as well as a competitor.
Nice. And did that? See, I don't know, because it's hard, because when you get into something like that where they put you in like hunting scenarios where you have to go and like locate a target and then shoot it and stuff, it's still not quite a hunting scenario, because until you actually have an animal on the other side that you're trying to put down, and it's moving and you're moving and it's breathing and it can catch something, it adds a new dynamic. But I know we've talked about a little bit the idea of you coming out to Missouri sometime to come on a hunt. What are your thoughts on hunting and hunting for your own food and stuff like that? Do you feel like that's something that every firearms owner should try, or do you feel like that's just it, give or take, like it doesn't necessarily matter? Like, what are your thoughts on that?
I hunt every single day, John. I go get in my car and I drive down to Costco and I get a big either rotisserie chicken or some frozen chicken breasts or ground turkey or a big old steak. And I plop it in my cart and then I pay and then I drive home. Yes, I think everyone should do it. I've never actually gone hunting. That's something I've just never had the opportunity to do. But I absolutely think it's a good thing, and I like the idea of killing my own meat and eating it. And venison is delicious.
Which I've brought some, and we've definitely tried. What was the first thing I brought? Was that it was the
Smoked
ground
jerky. I thought it was smoked jerky.
Yeah, well, you've had that, but like the first thing I actually brought where like you had to cook it, I think was the
Oh,
birds,
that's right. Yes, it was. It was ground.
venison with bacon in it.
Was it elk?
No, it was
Okay.
venison. Yeah, it was deer. So now, how much BLM land do you guys have out there in Arizona? Or is it a lot? Is a lot of it privately owned?
It's all BLM.
It's all BLM, right?
Arizona has one of the highest densities of BLM land in the country.
So what is stopping you from going out and trying to do like a coyote hunt or something like that? Because you literally have all the gear you need. You've got some brown clothes and.
My wife has gone coyote hunting. She's gone bobcat hunting. She's gone fox hunting. Like, my wife has done all that stuff. I never have.
Is it because of lack of information? Is it because of lack of, well, it's not lack of resources as far as the physical gear, but just lack of resources of maybe having a call or something like that that's stopping you? Or is it lack of time? Because I do know you're busy as hell. So
Yeah, so I mean, my work schedule when the shooting season's going on is generally in the middle of hunting seasons. So a lot of the major matches I know early November, my shooting schedule is packed. Among those matches is Area 2, which is either the first or second weekend here in Phoenix. And this is in November. And I know a lot of people that don't shoot that match because that's whitetail season or whatever it is at that point. So I know a lot of my matches conflict with the hunting seasons like that. As far as varmint hunting, I'm not pretty sure there's no season for that kind of thing here.
you can pretty much drop them whenever. Yeah.
Yeah, so I don't have a good excuse for that.
So I would highly suggest you go out and at least give coyote hunting a try. Which, don't get me wrong, I haven't had a chance to go out coyote hunting, like properly coyote hunting. I've had coyotes come across me when I was deer hunting, and I've even tried to take a shot at one. Although typically when I'm deer hunting, I'm using my bow, so it's a little bit fairer of a fight. And coyotes are small targets. Like a deer is not a huge target either. Especially here in Missouri, like they're not like an elk, but like, yeah, I ended up taking a shot at a coyote at 30 yards. He was 31 yards, and I tried to take a shot at him, and I ended up just clipping some hair off of his tail, and he ran off and still chased the deer that he was chasing. So I was sad that I didn't drop him, but again, it was still with a bow, which.
Speaking of hunting, the hunting lodge that we stayed in Nebraska for Area 3 at was nice.
That was such a diamond in the rough find. I was blown away when I saw the pictures, and then when I walked in, because I got to be the first one to walk into the property, and holy crap, that lodge was absolutely insane. Maybe I'll try and post a couple pictures or something like that on this post. Yeah, so Area 3, and that was a lot of fun. So that was a match that was held in Grand Island, Nebraska. We had a fun time. We had a great group of people staying at our Airbnb and all that kind of stuff. Now, you accomplished something at that match that a few shooters I know for a fact have ever been able to do, which is you got to a point where you didn't even have to shoot the last stage in order to win. So, I mean, what do you do? Because I know you came up to me and you said, well, should I shoot the stage or not? Which, of course, I was like, well, why wouldn't you shoot the stage? And you brought up a very good point. Well, I could DQ and lose. Now, granted, as long as we don't do anything stupid, typically we keep that problem at bay. But were you legitimately considering not shooting the last stage?
No. No, my goal for the match was to try and win the overall in carry optics and or limited, which I came up short on both of those attempts, but I was close.
But
So for Area 3, there weren't a ton of top level production shooters. So I mean, I don't want to say if I didn't win the match, like I would be disappointed, but that's the reality. Like I expected to win that match if unless something drastically went wrong. But my goal was to not only compete with the people in production that were shooting my gear, but also to compete against the people in limited with high cap 40 caliber major guns and carry optics with red dots and 23 round magazines. So that's I like to shoot for something that's kind of out of reach sometimes, and sometimes I get it, sometimes I don't. But I'd rather shoot for something that's what was it? If you shoot for the moon, if you miss, you're still among the stars. But it's something to keep you motivated, something to keep you pressing your aggression, and it works for me. That's what I use PCC for at local matches. So local matches, we have some really good shooters, but they don't always shoot every local USPSA match. So if I'm shooting limited or production or single stack or whatever division I'm shooting, I'm not necessarily competing against people in those divisions. I'm competing against somebody shooting a PCC or an open gun who isn't as good a shooter as I am, but with their advantage, that elevates their ability. So now I've got more equal competition to gauge myself against. And I don't always win, but I try.
well, and yeah, I think that's a good thing now because it was one of the things that I fell into with being in Vegas because for the longest time I always had someone to chase. There was always a better shooter than me, and then it got to a point where I became the top shooter in the area, and yeah, at that point it no longer became like, okay, well, I don't want to just, if I'm going to shoot limited, I don't care about winning limited. I just want to win overall. I want to make sure I want to beat as many open guys or PCC guys, and even when we were doing Steel Challenge, then my goal became I wanted to beat the rimfire guys because they get to start with the gun at the low ready, not in a holster, whereas I had to draw from surrender each time and stuff. So,
Right.
and I think you're right.
And just to be clear, shooting limited, shooting production, shooting carry optics, you can brag about winning an overall. But if you're shooting open or PCC, don't tell me you won the overall and you beat a bunch of revolver and single stack shooters. Get out of here. All right? That's nonsense.
Yes, yep, I would agree to that. Well, and let's be honest too. Like the overall is literally just bragging rights for that particular. Like there's some people that just don't give a damn. Like, oh, cool, you won over. I don't care that you won overall. It doesn't matter as long as you won your division. That's fine. But some people like make it a point to be like, oh, I was fourth overall. It's like, okay, cool. That's still
Well,
not.
I mean, you'll see some people that, it's first place overall at, XYZ club. And you go and everyone's prepping for single stack nationals and revolver nationals. And no one else shot PCC. And, like you're really bragging about beating a bunch of 8-round single stacks and revolvers with a rifle and 50-round drum. Come on.
Yeah. Yep. Exactly. But like you said, and back to the original point was the idea of like, I think that is a very good point and good thing to focus on and maybe even let people out there know. Like I think having the fire for competition is absolutely based upon you need to have something to chase. Like even race dogs, they put a fake rabbit out in front of them to give them that desire to chase something and run fast and stuff. And if you can't find someone in your own division, then yeah, step up, go something a little bit more ridiculous. If you're shooting production and you keep beating all the limited guys, then it's time to start focusing on the open guys because it'll keep that drive going of wanting to improve and challenge yourself and stuff like that.
On that topic of kind of match pressure or competition, going back to USPSA Multi-Gun Nationals, their format that they did, how do you feel about the last 4 stages on Sunday that everyone shot?
I thought it was a very cool idea to have um, the last part of the match being a legit race where after the first 2 days, everyone had shot all the same stages and we all had the same stages to shoot at the end. So you can kind of keep a little bit closer eye on the race. But one thing that I've always found anticlimactic about the shooting sports is the fact that, like, you watch an F1 race, you don't know who's going to win until the very last lap when everyone's crossing the finish line. Someone can wreck, someone can spin out or anything like that. Things can change very quickly. And then the moment that the race is over, like, it was everything leading up to that moment, and then it's over and it matters. Here's the results, right? And I always thought it was interesting with the shooting world where, like, we have the hour arbitration period. Not to say it's not important, because mistakes do happen. I've caught mistakes on my matches and all that kind of stuff. But it's always seemed kind of anticlimactic to do an awards ceremony where after everyone's known that you've won for an hour, now they have to clap for you while you collect your trophy.
Right.
I wish there was a way where we could, and I think going back to World Multigun match, the Surefire World Multigun match in Vegas, I think Pete had something that was very, very fun at the end of that match, which was the idea of having a final stage shootout amongst, I think it was like the top 12 or top 16 shooters or something like that,
where it was basically at an advanced value stage. So there was a possibility for more of a point shift off of a shoot-off than, your last stage in the actual match, technically.
Yeah, like, it gave you one last opportunity right there, put up or shut up, to improve or to even decrease. Like, if you really shot a crap stage and everyone else edged you out with the pressure and stuff. But that made it a little bit more exciting, because then it literally came down to the very last shooter could either completely burn it down and shuffle the entire order, or could crash and burn under the pressure of being that last shooter and shift things or whatever. And I thought that was kind of cool, because, like, it was almost like as soon as that was done, it immediately went to, okay, let's hand out the awards, because that shoot off was kind of the arbitrary period where all the other competitors could argue their scores. They noticed there was a mistake or there had to be a change or something like that. And then while that process was taking place, the top shooters, which knew where we stood, got one more chance to try and shuffle the order up. I thought that was very cool. I would love to find or see if there was a way to make it to where there could be a little bit more excitement of the end of one, having the race finish under race pressure, kind of, and then two, the other thing I think is lacking in our sport is visual participation. So Three Gun Nation, when they would do the shoot-offs, like, I think the first time you and I saw the shoot-off was at SHOT Show when they were filming the finals.
Yep.
And we jumped on a bus and went out there, and we didn't realize how cold it was going to be, and we were wearing like t-shirts.
It was an awkward experience, and we were cold the whole night, but it was still fun. I mean, we got to watch a whole bunch of really good shooters shoot multi-gun, and it was visual, right? Like, everything either falls down or explodes, right? So it's compared to most of what you see in USPSA was much more visual.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the things that we're lacking as far as viewership value. Or what's what I'm looking for? Like, I think that's why Top Shot did so well, and I talked about that with Chris Chang when I had him on. Was like the idea, like, when you were watching the show Top Shot, you knew if someone hit the target or missed, because it either blew up, shattered, broke, or it didn't, right? Versus us, like, we'll shoot a 32-round stage, and 30 of those rounds are going into cardboard targets, which means that you're seeing the splash on the berm, but where did they hit on the cardboard? I've shown people my videos, and they've been like, "Are you hitting anything?" Like, well, yeah, the bullets are going through the cardboard. Like, oh, okay, because I just kept seeing you hit the dirt.
You see, I don't think that's why Top Shot did well.
I'm not saying that's the only reason, but I do think that was one reason, because, like, if it was just like, oh, they just shot a bunch of targets and now let's go down range and score them, and you got to wait 30 seconds for someone to come back and say, okay, your total points is this. I think visually, even in general, like, when it comes to food, we're still visual creatures. If something looks good, then we want to eat it, right? Even if it ends up tasting like crap, it's still, for a moment, you're like, God, that looks so good. I think shooting could be the same way, like a lot of sports and stuff like that, where it's just like, it's something I think we're missing, but not missing in the aspect of if we wanted to try and grow the sport to the more public arena. As far as our sport goes, with what we have, I think we have a very solid foundation, and I'm happy with how the sport is. But
yeah, and going back to multi-gun nationals with those last 4 stages, with everyone having completed the exact same portion of the match, right? So stages 1 through 8, every competitor has those stages in, and the remaining stages are 9 through 12. So that aspect, absolutely loved. I wasn't the biggest fan of the style of stages that they were, because they were 100% static, stand and shoot. They were shotgun heavy, which I'm never a fan of because shotguns are dumb. And it was just a possibility for a much larger point swing based on the overall time it took you to shoot a stage, right? So in USPSA multi-gun, a 10-round stage or a 10-second stage is worth 100 points. A 100-second stage is also worth 100 points. So if you have a miss penalty, a 10-second penalty on a 100-second stage, you lose, 10 points. If you have a missed 10-second penalty on a 10-second stage, you just lost 50 points. You lost half of the available percentage points on that stage. So maybe there's room to grow as far as the type of stages that we finish the match on. Like, that would be my biggest pet peeve. But absolutely, I think a race to the finish with everyone knowing exactly where they're at going into their final set of stages and single stage is way better than cruising through the match and hoping for the best.
yeah, no, I would agree with you. Yeah, the stand and shoots were a bit anticlimactic. It was, well, it felt like trying to turn a multi-gun match into a USPSA match by making it such a technical stage where you had to execute perfectly in order to make it closer and all that kind of stuff. Yeah, but like you said, like one was multi-gun and it was the offset was so far off. Like, yeah, when all the other stages throughout the match were literally anywhere from 40 to 120 seconds, and then all of a sudden you've got 4 stages that are all under 15 seconds.
Well, the longest stage that I think I shot was 21 seconds, and it was an all shotgun stage. And the rifle pistol stages were low teens, and then the last shotgun stage was 14, 15, something like that. So yeah,
we're
they're
not
all
going to
very
talk about the
short
last shotgun
stages.
stage. We're
Pardon?
not going to talk about the last shotgun stage.
Your last shotgun stage was my first shotgun stage of that day, and I had the privilege of watching you run it, and I was all excited. I had my camera out, and I'm like, oh, get some good angles and get in there, and then
Well, I was up there for plenty of time for you to get all the angles you could possibly want.
your run was gold for B-roll footage. There's a lot of
Yes.
B-roll off of that.
Well, and it started out so well because like I smashed the movers. I
Yeah.
smashed the clay targets, no problem. It was just that one stupid pipe.
Well, and then finally,
anyone that doesn't know.
you get to a point where your shotgun's working 100%, and then you're presented with a can at 20 plus yards that
A heavy ass can.
that probably weighs 7 or 8 pounds, and you need to knock this over with birdshot, and your choke just wasn't tight enough, and your shot just wasn't fast or heavy enough, and it was a bad day.
Well, and then to walk off the stage and have everyone telling you, like, dude, I think if you shot like 1 or 2 more shots at it, you probably would have tipped it off because it was right on the edge of the stand. You're just like, well, why didn't someone cough or give me an indicator? Like,
I mean, we all know that stage was the difference between you and Daniel Horner. So,
yeah, exactly. It absolutely was. Like between like me and Daniel Horner, as far as like which one of us finished the match or didn't. No, that was rough. But either way, no, I agree. And I guess, God, you know what? Multi-gun, though, it's so interesting how USPSA, like how the shooting sports are so different in the fact that like it's still a race, but like, USPSA, we're talking about the difference between first and 10th place will be like a 2-second gap. versus 3-gun. First difference between first and 10 place could literally be
It could be minutes.
30 seconds.
Right.
Yeah, 30 seconds, 40 seconds, whatever.
No,
It's just interesting that
USPSA is all about execution of your stage plan to perfection, or as close to perfection as possible, gun manipulation, speed, and accuracy. Right? All of those things come into play for USPSA pistol. For 3-gun or multi-gun, whether it's USPSA or some kind of outlaw style, it's all about risk mitigation. It's all about not making that massive mistake. It's making sure your equipment runs as well as possible from just a reliability standpoint. But ultimately, it's just not having the disaster that sets you back. It's all risk mitigation for multi-gun.
Yeah, and I think multi-gun also is very, very much. Well, I don't know, like because USPSA, I think it's maybe two different types of mental aspects of it. Because USPSA is definitely, I think, more higher pressure in the fine-tuned stuff. But I mean, at any match I guess you go to, if you have that like give up mentality of like, well, that's it for me, then I'm done. Then like, don't be surprised if you continue to slide down the ranks versus constantly trying to want to stay in the fight and stay engaged. Because I mean, that's like basically what happened with me at Area 3. Like, my first day was so terrible, and I couldn't put my finger on what was going on. But the second day, I wasn't like, well, I'm out of the race. It was just kind of more like, well, I don't know if I'm out of the race entirely, so I'm just going to go down and try and lay some hate and then see where the things stack up. But at no point did I necessarily give up. I still had the intentions of wanting to win stages and beat my competitors and stuff. But I think it's important for some people, and I think that's maybe where some people kind of the world of competition maybe eludes them, because like to be able to get beat to hell for a full day and then to come back wanting to look for more and to get back in the fight is just kind of, I think, weird for some people to comprehend.
No, we like to abuse ourselves. There's no question about that.
Well, and also remember this, you got to understand. So Nils is probably one of the few professional competition shooters, I would say. And what I mean by that is that, like, Tiger Woods, when he gets done playing a round of golf, does not go into the clubhouse, put on a uniform, and start checking guests in to play a round of 18, right? He plays golf. That's literally what he gets paid for. So Nils here, while he does have a job with Canik, a lot of his job literally does come from the fact that they're sending him out to win with their product. And also obviously R&D. He's testing it. He's beating the hell out of it. Like we get to accelerate the life of our products, right? Like we're putting them through tests that it might take a normal person a year to put as many rounds downrange as we will in 2 or 3 months. But
and a lot of what you see in the firearm industry today is from competition shooters over the last 3 or 4 decades, right? Like, from shooting style and technique to firearm design, optics design, like most of that has come from the competition world.
Yep, that's very true. Otherwise, we'd all still be shooting Weaver with one hand up and revolvers, and
it is a possibility, yeah.
Or even the fact that like high capacity 2011 style pistols, like, the way those came about was literally someone being like, I'm just going to start welding things together and see if they stick. Like, that's, yeah, I mean, development and innovation and stuff is just people saying, what the hell, let's give it a try, why not, right? But,
well, yeah, it usually comes from us crazy people that just wants to beat their friends with their cool pistol in a match. And that evolves into, micro red dot sights and competition optics and slide lightning and optics cuts and mag wells and extended mag releases and compensators, and like it's unbelievable how much stuff has come out of sport shooting.
And how much has come to the EDC life. Because if we look back 10 years, right, and people seeing open guns, what was it? Heroes, I think was the TV show, right? Where the bad guy, the cheerleader's dad, I think is who it was. He would like he was basically, his job was to chase around all these people.
I know what you're talking about.
Okay,
but I've never seen it.
So the great show for the first like 3 seasons, and after that it falls off, just like most shows do, right? But so you've got these people that they start to develop these powers randomly, So like one guy all of a sudden just one day decides that or figures out that he can run super fast like the Flash, and then another guy figures out that he knows how to fly, and another person knows that they can go invisible, right? And this character who is a cheerleader, and she becomes a superhero, but her father works for a government agency whose job is to track these heroes down, these people with hero abilities, and either arrest them or kill them and eliminate them, right? And the gun that he uses in the series was an Infinity 2011 high cap pistol with a red dot and a compensator on it and stuff. And he carries it like in a shoulder holster, right?
Right.
But I remember I was watching it the first time someone saw that gun. They were like, "Oh my God, that thing is so cool!" And I'm like, "Do you want to shoot one? I know someone that's got one. We can call them up and go shoot it and stuff." Like, their mind was blown the first time they saw an open gun on TV, right? So we fast forward to today, and now you see all these people that are drawing from appendix carry concealed a Glock 19 with a ramjet compensator from, you know, Radiant Arms or something like that. They've got a Vortex red dot on it. They've got a magwell, and you're just like, wow, we literally turned competition guns into carry guns using the technology. Whereas 10 years ago, we used to joke like, yeah, who's going to carry an open gun around, right? Like,
Right.
Now you've kind of got versions that are very, very similar to what an open gun was. Because it's the SIG. Is it like the Macro X365 or something like that? That has like it's like the 4-inch barrel, but like a 5-inch slide because it's got.
Is that the one with the porting in the slide with the barrel that vents gas up?
Yeah, like that's literally an open gun. It's a smaller version, but it's got everything that you can put a red dot on it. It's got a compensator, and now that's considered an everyday carry. If you want a great concealable gun that you can rely on, you know, here it is. And it's just like, yeah, that's funny how now the competition gun is, oh yeah, but can you shoot a Glock stock 17? No, you can't, can you? I can. That's how the competition world is.
Because the triggers are terrible. You should buy a Canik.
Yeah. Well,
Shameless
you know what? Well, that's definitely not a shame. There's so much truth to that statement. You know, I've done a couple videos about the Caniks that we've won. Therefore, I can say what I think about them because it's not like you guys sent me a gun and I have to owe you a favor now. Like, I won it. So if I think
That's
it's
true.
trash,
This guy
trash,
comes
right?
over to our booth at NRA and he'll win our random gun giveaways. I'm like, God damn it! I'm just scanning through this thing and we random generate John's name and I'm calling the names out, right? And I honest to God was this close to not calling his name because I knew how bad it would look, but.
Yeah, so that was a legit win for those of you that keep thinking it was fake. Okay,
That's right. But I
will
swear
say,
that went through my head. I'm like, fuck.
well, when you called it, I was like, what trick are they playing here? But no, actually, I did watch the guy. I can't remember his name, but he was basically doing the scroll random, and then when he stopped it and it was my name, I was like, oh my God, are you for real? That just happened. Okay.
By the way,
but either way,
anyone that ever attends the NRA annual meeting, it travels around the country. It happens once a year. Canik, Firearms, and Century Arms have a booth, and we do gun giveaways. We do swag giveaways. We've got patches. We've got T-shirts. We love talking with our customers at shows like NRA, and we love giving back to them. So swing by the Canik Century Arms booth, and I'll hook you up with some swag.
And it's good stuff too. Like the shirts, Kelly wears the shirts all the time because she steals them from me. The patches are your guys' marketing department when it comes to creation of PVC patches is so insane. The entire Rival Spy versus Spy patch that came out, I'm fairly certain that was probably the most popular patch that was cycling around the showroom floor.
Yeah, we've had the Spy versus Spy patch this year. I want to say it was last year we had the big old PVC Tic Tac Canik patch.
Mm-hmm.
That was super popular. And we do other fun stuff too, like for US Palm, which is our magazine company. We do a banana clip, so it's just like a yellow banana magazine. It's a magazine clip, banana clip. It's funny. So we do stuff like that. We enjoy guns. We like shooting. We like having a good time. So we definitely bring that to our products.
Yes, and then when it comes to the product itself, like you guys are just knocking it out of the park. I can't I can't recall a single Canik I ever picked up, pulled the trigger, and didn't think that, like, one, it feels like, well, it's already broken in. Because typically, like, when you get a new gun, like, sometimes it can just feel a little rough, and then as rounds go through it, it gets smoother. Your guys' trigger right out of the box already feels like it's been thoroughly broken in without actually having to be broken in. And just, yeah, the take up, the break, the after travel, like, it's insane. It's really insane the quality gun you get for the price you guys sell it. So,
Well, and the trigger's
absolutely.
probably the main reason people shoot our guns so well. Like that's the main factor in determining how accurate you are with a pistol is the trigger. So if you have the most accurate gun in the world, but if you can't pull the trigger in a way that the sights don't stay still on target when you press it, it doesn't matter. But our gun and our triggers historically have been very predictable. They have a good clean break. So when you pull the trigger, the sights don't move off target, which means the bullet goes where you want it to go, not some other place. So you're the golfer with the good shot, not the golfer that thought he did everything right, and then the ball goes far left.
Exactly. Right on. Well, let's talk about one more thing just real quick before we kind of start to wrap this up, and that is the idea of you shoot other things like a camera, and what I want to get to with something like this is obviously there's a lot of people out there that do a lot of filming, whether or not it's with phones and DSLRs or all that kind of stuff. And so my question to you, knowing your background behind photography, which is not you're not a professional photographer, but you do know quite a bit about cameras and all that kind of stuff, right? With the quality of cell phones nowadays, do you think people still need to be investing in DSLRs to get good content creation? Or do you think like the cell phone is becoming the new, like if you've got a cell phone, then just focus on that. You can get great match videos. And I think there's other things too, like the Insta360 or the GoPros, but that's a whole separate scenario. I'm talking about just the general shooter that doesn't necessarily care about putting a YouTube channel together, but does want to have memories and stuff. What are your thoughts on the photography world now that cameras and cell phones have gotten as good as they are, knowing what you know about the cameras?
So yes, I can pretend to be a camera snob when I want to. I don't have a whole bunch of high dollar or expensive video cameras. Most of what I have is photography specific, even though they could be used as video cameras if I really wanted to. iPhones these days take better video than we need for YouTube by far. 99% of the time when I watch a YouTube video, I'm out for a walk and my phone's in my pocket. I'm just listening to it. So while video is super important for certain things, I think audio is probably as important, if not more important than the video. So like if you have an iPhone and you have some kind of external microphone or some kind of wireless mic system, probably the best combo you can possibly have. The one downside I've seen with the iPhone for me is just data storage. Like everything goes to your photo reel or photo roll, and I haven't figured out the most efficient way for me to deal with all the information or all the storage required yet. But from a film standpoint, just taking the video, it's so much easier. There's less stuff to set up, and if you have the video, one, that's better than not having the video, but you're also not having to spend a whole bunch of time thinking about settings or ISO settings and frame rate and blah 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 blah. If you're taking 4K at 30 frames a second, that's going to be good enough for a YouTube video, and you pair it with decent audio, and that's all you need. 1 million followers, bam.
1 million followers, just like that. We're gonna post how to get 1 million followers, and it's only gonna get like 6 views.
Yep.
Okay, so filming of match videos in itself can almost become like an art, because there's sometimes you hand your camera off to someone and they film it, and when you get the footage back, you're like, oh god, like they did a terrible job. So let's have Nils Jonasson's pro tips on how to properly frame and film someone while they're shooting in, let's say, maybe what are your top 3 tips that you could give to someone?
Well, so if you're filming someone else or you're filming for a particular purpose, if you're filming for a good YouTube video, you want cool angles and brass ejection and aggressive movement and seeing the target. Like those are some elements that are really important for an entertaining YouTube video. If you're taking video for the intent to learn from your video, right? So you shoot a match, you have somebody video you. If you're going to learn from it, you want a whole body view, which I think in YouTube is probably less aesthetically pleasing. It's a little more boring, but you see what your body's doing, you see how you're moving, how efficiently you're moving, how you can change and increase your efficiency. So from that perspective, not 0.5x, whoever puts the phone on 0.5x zoom, all should burn in hell. So leave it on 1x, or zoom in if you need to get the right angle. But you want to be able to see head to toe, you want to be able to see the feet, see the ground, and if you can get a good angle with targets and, you know, all the aesthetic stuff, great. But you want a whole body in the video, for me.
Okay. And the only thing I'll add to that is to start filming a good 2 or 3 seconds before the shooting takes place, and then to keep filming a good 2 to 3 seconds after the shooting has finished. Actually, we do something where we will film up until the RO either says the time or we can get a picture of the time, just for reference. I know video typically in USPSA is deemed inadmissible when it comes to arguing something. However, you also have a very difficult time arguing that something isn't right. When you say, well, my score says it's 17-18, but watch this, and you show them a video of an RO saying 12:37. It's like, oh, right. Yeah, well, what the hell happened? Like, there's very clearly there was a mistake there. So not to say that automatically gets changed, but then you can at least argue for a reshoot and stuff.
Well, or, you know, you get the time, the last shot's recorded, and you get a video of the timer, and then unload and show clear, and then by the time they give it to the guy on the board or the guy on the tablet, the time's changed because they picked up the racking of the slide or something like that. And like you said, video isn't necessarily admissible in USPSA, but at least at that point you know what's correct.
Yeah, you can prove there's something. It might not be officially proving, but you can also just make a very good argument as to, like, well, here's what happened and whatnot. So that's the only other tip I would add to it. Yes, I do think video can be very helpful when it comes to training. For, like you said, like, you can learn a lot about how you enter a position or how you leave a position. You can learn a lot about, you know, are you doing like the slow tank turret where you just keep your gun fully extended, or do you drive the gun out and stuff, and all that can be very helpful in video. And I think that's what maybe some people lose out on, that fact of how important video can be when it comes to training. But also, don't do this. Don't keep rewinding and watching your screw up, because all you're doing is just enforcing, like, yep, I suck. Oh my God, look how much I suck. I'm so terrible. I should just go ahead and quit. Nope, don't do that.
Let's be honest. Most people are not like you and me. Most people don't post their disasters on the internet. So, yeah, most people post a quick snippet of highlight reels, and that's another pet peeve of mine, is highlight reels without a complete stage. What can you do with that? You have no idea how the competitor actually shot, right? So it's a snippet of here where your split was really good and you have a good reload and you hit those steel in a row. And then you edit all that together across 20 stages and, wow, I'm amazing. But I like posting when I can, you know, complete stages, start to finish, where you can actually see what I did and that it was good or that it wasn't. You know, sometimes things don't go right.
Yeah, that's true, and it happens everywhere. I think I've always joked with people, like, the day I walk away from a match having shot the perfect match, where I did everything perfectly, and I walk away from that match saying, like, I couldn't have done anything better, I'm just gonna quit, because it'll never happen again, probably. Like, to have that kind of a match.
Yeah, I've come close to that, but never completely.
Yeah. So, All right, well, let's kind of do a wrap up. I like to wrap things up with a quick little this or that kind of rapid fire question session, and then after that, I'll give you the floor to give us a final wrap up and whatnot. But we're just going to go ahead and start right off the bat. For Nils Jonasson, do you prefer cake or pie?
Oh, pie for sure. Well, cheesecake or pie. I'm not a huge cake person.
Cake or pie? Okay,
not just cake. Cheesecake.
Well,
It's a very specific kind of cake.
But is cheese okay? So we're gonna have to. You know what? I'm gonna make this. We're gonna do a post. We're gonna say, is cheesecake considered cake, or is that closer to a? Well, it's not a pie though.
It's not a pie. It's a specific type of cake. But like, I don't normally enjoy cake as a whole, but cheesecake is one of my go-tos.
Interesting. Okay. But between these two, so if you had to pick like traditional cake or pie, then you're going with pie.
Yeah.
Okay. Friends or The Office?
Oh, Friends. You can't pair that one together though, right? Like they're both such, they're both such
so
good
what would
shows.
be the argument then? What would you put up against Friends?
What would I put up? Well, they're just such different shows, right?
Well, I mean, in a way, but not.
They're pretty different.
So what would have been a good show to pair against Friends then? Because I almost thought of Big Bang Theory because it's kind of the same. You know, sitcom-y, group of friends. Each friend has their own particular quirk.
Right. Between those two, I would still choose Friends. But that's just because I'm not the biggest Big Bang Theory. Like, I'd rather watch an episode of Bluey than Big Bang.
Who wouldn't, right? Bluey is amazing. Bluey is awesome. All right. Would you rather go out for steaks or go out for sushi?
Sushi.
And not pay. And not have to pay.
Sushi.
Sushi. Okay. When you do have sushi, do you prefer like the traditional sushi, like a little bed of rice with raw fish on it, or do you prefer rolls?
Well, the traditional sushi on a bed of rice is called nigiri, and that's fish on rice. If you want sashimi, that's more traditional sushi. That's where it's just the little bit of
just the fish.
Just the fish, exactly. And then rolls are sushi rolls. I like them all. Combination of all three. Because you can't
that was
just
a very
have,
Joey moment.
You can't just have one, right? So one, you've got to not do the nigiri, right? The nigiri is the sucker bet. It's kind of like a salad at an all-you-can-eat buffet, right? Or a pasta. It's a sucker bet. So you don't want the sushi on the rice because then every bite you're eating rice. It's a waste of stomach space. So you want the nigiri. You want the nigiri and then some type of roll that you like whether it's a rainbow roll or something with eel sauce, which is delicious. And then you combine some of that nigiri, not the nigiri, the sashimi, with the roll. Now you've got like a super roll. So good.
Yep. Man, I wish there was better sushi here in Chillicothe. But...
Yeah, well, in Phoenix, Arizona, where you've got some primo sushi. So
you do, yes, and they're all you can eat. So we can, we walk in and people go. You can hear management go, "Oh gosh." All right. Wings or ribs?
Wings.
Really?
Yep.
I would have figured you would. And now that you've got your own smoker and all that kind of stuff, you still would choose to cook.
So
I
haven't smoked.
Wings and ribs.
I haven't smoked a whole lot of wings or ribs on the smoker. I've done more briskets. I've done more chicken, that kind of thing on the smoker. But if you go to Barro's Pizza and you get like a sweet red chili traditional wing, extra well done, best flavor.
Really hard to beat more than ribs. Oh, so I think I'd probably have to go for ribs if it were me. But that's because I smoke some awesome ribs. If you ever come out to Missouri, I'll be sure to make that happen.
It sounds like a deal.
Be good. So, all right. And last question is the most burning question. I think you would have most fun with this one. But would you rather have a Tesla Model S or an Audi R8?
You can't compare those two cars, John. God.
I can, and I did.
All right,
so
all right. So I haven't driven an R8, and I think the R8's super impractical because that's a two-door coupe mid-engine car. The Tesla is the fastest car you'll ever drive in your entire life, and they're insanely fun to drive. Between the two, the Tesla's more practical, but the Audi's a better car. The more direct comparison would be an Audi RS7, which is their four-door, full-size, like large sedan with more of like a hatch trunk. All-wheel drive. That's more of a direct competitor against the Tesla from a capability standpoint, and you just put gas in it instead of charging a battery for an hour. So between those two, I would choose the Audi.
okay, but I told you to pick between the Tesla Model S and the Audi R8,
Audi R8.
and I was just going based on speed.
Audi R8.
That Audi R8. Wow.
Yeah.
I honestly thought you might have gone with the Tesla.
Well, and the Tesla's great, but I went to track day a couple years ago with a friend of mine named Scott, and there was a Audi R8 that was stripped down, had this big old wing on the back, and I think that was one of the old V10s, and it just ripping around the track like it's pretty ridiculous. So I do that with my R8.
Well, there you go. You heard it first. Nils would rather trash the environment than save it with the Tesla. He wants the Audi.
The Teslas aren't better for the environment.
I know, that's definitely, well, especially when it comes to the idea, I'm helping the environment. Now hold on while I plug my electric car into my house that burns fossil fuels to charge it. Same problem, dude. Same problem. But anywho, we're not here to talk about politics. We're here to talk about Nils Jonasson, which we just finished up. So Nils, at this point, I like to give you an opportunity to have the floor so that you can thank any sponsors, people in your life, like your wife, make sure you don't forget her, and basically whatever else you want to say. If there's anything on your mind, then now's your chance. The floor is yours, my friend.
So I intentionally don't thank my wife because that's just implied, right? None of this would be possible without Jessica Jonasson, the love of my life, who's currently at work making the real money to pay the bills. I'm just here talking about guns on a shooting podcast, so what do I have to complain about? But yeah, my name is Nils Jonasson. If you want to catch me on social media, Nils Jonasson on YouTube or No Skills Nils on Instagram. I post cool shooting stuff and stupid videos all the time, so check me out there. As far as people I'd like to thank or sponsors, Canik Firearms is the company and the reason that I can do what I do as much as I do. So I travel all over the place. I talk about guns. I design guns. Thank you, Canik. You guys have been a huge part of my life over the last several years, and I look forward to keeping on.
All right. Well, ladies and gentlemen, that's going to wrap up another episode of Open Action with John McClain, brought to you by Armscor Precision. I hope you guys found this one enjoyable, fun, informative, entertaining, all of the above. With that being said, Nils, thank you so much for taking the time to sit down and chat with me. I really do appreciate it. It's been a pleasure knowing you as long as I have. I look forward to another few decades together of us shooting matches together and doing all that kind of stuff. And with that being said, I guess we'll just go ahead and wrap this one up. So thank you guys so much for tuning in and listening. Make sure you go follow Nils, Nils Jonasson for YouTube, and then No Skill Nils for Instagram. Awesome name for Instagram, by the way, which ask him about it sometimes, and I'm sure he'll tell you where that came from. So with that being said, we're going to go ahead and sign off on this one. Thank you guys so much, and I'll catch you on the next episode of Open Action with John McClain, brought to you by Armscor.